Welcome back to the Joseph Graham Show. Today I'm with Brian Livingston. Now, I've had a lot of different people on, but you do something that's a little bit more unique. Like you actually help the environment, but also help businesses save money and reduce costs. So it's kind of like a nice little niche there. And I know I gave like a super high, crazy level. I'm sure you do a lot of other stuff. But Brian, in your own words, tell us what you do, who you are, and who you help.
Yeah, I guess I'll just give a quick 15-second background on me. I was a chemical engineer my whole career. In the last 20 years or so, I spent with Caterpillar in their diesel engine division. So I've kind of got the chemistry side and I've got the diesel engine side. And so what I do is I help companies burn less diesel fuel in their big diesel drinking equipment, like over-the-road trucks, locomotives, mining equipment, uh, port equipment, that kind of thing. And yeah, I'm really excited to be able to talk about it because it's something that the world needs. And right away, I guess I'll just say, if you need to tune out or something, but if it sounds interesting, you can kind of see more at decarbonize5.com. I don't mean to be too much of a pitch, but if if you have to go, whatever, decarbonize5.com will kind of get you into me and some calculators to figure out what this is worth for you, et cetera. So I'll just throw that out there now. Anyway, yeah, I'm excited to be here and excited to talk about sustainability, decarbonization, uh, carbon footprint, all those kinds of things, and what we can do about it today.
Mhm. Well, and it was funny because we were talking about this beforehand, and you were like, because we always do a pre-call, and you were like, yeah, there's both extremes where the world's going to end tomorrow if we don't just like not use toilet paper and not drive a car, and then there's nothing wrong. But in reality, like here's a funny story that I haven't shared as much. I used to sell heavy equipment. So I know a lot of
Ah,
people that would do like the diesel, everything was diesel. That burns a lot of stuff. There's a lot of different things there. How did you even come up with was this your idea that you came up with to save money through the diesel? And how does it even work? Because people are like, what, do you just put a pill in there and it makes it work? Like, I'm
yeah,
sure people are
exactly.
like
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
figure it out.
right. Yeah, I know. In the past, there's been a lot of devices, or lots of even additives you add and whatever. And people try to explain. It's like, well, it's kind of magic, And so I'm glad you gave me an opportunity to talk about how this works because I love to tell people how it works. I think I can break it back down to high school chemistry, where most people go, "Ah, I think I remember that. Yeah, I get that." Um, well, let me grab a prop here real quick.
Okay, sure.
This essentially is the device, and it looks like a copper tube filled with stuff because that's exactly what it is. It's filled with rare earth catalysts. And for those of you who kind of do remember your high school chemistry, um, you put your diesel fuel in this side, and diesel fuel is long chain molecules, right? And you come out this other end, and you've broken up some of those by this catalyzer in here, the catalytic effects of these rare earth metals, and so you come out with some slightly shorter molecules over here. And so everybody kind of knows, or at least probably remember if I remind you, that shorter molecules are going to burn cleaner and easier than longer molecules. And so that's kind of how the chemistry and the physics works on this, because, and again, it's not all the molecules, you don't bring them all up, but enough of them to make a difference. And so you put those shorter molecules in with the rest of your diesel, and when it goes into the cylinder to be burned, combusted, it just does so more efficiently. So you get more power out of it and less emissions. And so, most of the time we're talking like 5 to 7% in large equipment. So, if you're using 5 to 7% less fuel to get the same amount of work done, that also means you're producing 5 to 7% less CO2, right? And so, that's kind of where the beauty of this thing is, because it's going to pay for itself over and over again. Um, so, say on a over the road truck, it pays for itself in about 12 months. In mining equipment, railroads, et cetera, because they drink a lot more diesel. You're probably
Mhm.
talking 3 to 4 month, you know, payback on this. So, you kind of do the math on that. Wait a minute, that's 300 or 400% return on investment. Um,
Yeah. Well, here's
yeah,
my question, because here's where my
yeah,
mind goes with it. One, it does help on the carbon emission side, which is great. But two, because when we're thinking, and a lot of people listen to this are more on the business side, how do I save money for my thing?
yeah,
3 to 5%, and you have 10 trucks. that's times 10. Like you're going to have that compound interest there. So with how it works, because now my mind's going into my little nerdishness a little bit here.
Good.
So you said it gives it more power. Does it just enhance what it do, or does it just give it a longer lasting cycle so your diesel goes farther? How does that work?
Yeah, no, good question. Because you're kind of, in effect, you've kind of pre-broken up some of those longer molecules so that you don't have to do that in the cylinder. If you're following me on the physics there, that means you have more available power to push the piston down instead of busting up molecules. And so that's what gives you more power per the same amount of fuel. And the way modern engines work, it measures the power being produced, and then it either adds more fuel or subtracts fuel or whatever. So as the engine computer sees that we're producing more power, it just backs off the fuel rate a little bit, and that's what gives you your 5 to 7% savings, because you're actually putting less fuel in to get the same amount of power.
Gotcha. And you can still go the distance. How does this
Yeah,
compare to, because I know everyone's talking about electric or hydrogen or wind or whatever, and
yep,
some of the technologies are farther along, some are not. Like we all know that in reality, the wind turbines aren't really that great because of the cost to build them, where maybe some electrical stuff is better. How does it compare to like an electrical vehicle? Because you see, like the Amazons of the world, we're all electric or the other. How does that compare cost wise and carbon footprint wise? Because and you probably know this better than I do, correct me if I'm wrong, there's still a lot of our electric grid is powered by coal, if I'm remembering correctly. So you're still
yep.
getting a lot of that kick out. So how does it compare to that?
Boy, that kind of depends on where in the spectrum or who's answering the question. If you look at it just strictly as tailpipe emissions, electric is zero, wonderful.
Mhm.
But then somebody has to be producing all the electricity somewhere. And yes, a lot of it is coal. You can do a good job cleaning up coal as you burn it. If you have enough after treatment to take all the particulates out and stuff like that, that's expensive. Not every place does that. Not every place even is mandated to have to do, super clean. So, when you read all these studies, it kind of depends on the bias of the person doing the studies. How much do you include in that? Like, okay, do you include the pollution that was created building that electric plant? Do you talk about the crops displaced on, on that piece of ground? And some people go to extremes like that. So if you just do tailpipe emissions, electric is zero, wonderful. And it'll take 5 to 7% out, which is not zero. On the other hand, though, we can do this today. You can do it at very low cost, and it's going to pay you back very, very quickly. If you buy an electric truck, for example, it's going to be a whole lot more expensive than a diesel truck, at least at this point. Someday, who knows? But that's where we're at today. And so, how long is it going to take for that to pay back? More than a year.
Well, and I
You're not
have
going to get your
another,
money back in a year.
yeah, I have another question. So I'm thinking about it because I don't know this field as well. But can an electric vehicle have as much of a payload as a diesel vehicle right now? Like, are they apples to apples? Because before they weren't apples to apples. Like, the electric could not pull as much as the diesel or gasoline engine. So I'm just wondering, has that
Yeah.
caught up
No,
yet? Or,
great question. No, it has not come to par yet, or to come to even, because you still have to have a lot of batteries. You can think about how much energy like a mining truck, a 400 or that's a big one, but a 200, 300, 400 ton mining truck, imagine the amount of batteries you have to have on that. And so if you have to have, 5 tons worth of batteries, 10 tons worth of batteries, that means your payload is 5 or 10 tons less. So every time you're climbing up out of that hill, with a load of ore, it's 5 or 10 tons less. So that just means you have to make more runs in a day, right?
Mhm.
And so no, it's not even, and you have to figure that in. And again, you're going to pay a lot more for that truck. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but
Mhm.
let's just run the numbers. And if a mining truck is going to last, with rebuilds and stuff, probably at least 25 years. Um, if you put a device like this on there and start saving 5 to 7% on things, you're going to pay that back 3 or 4 times every year for the next 20 years until you can until your whole fleet is electrified or whatever, if that's the direction you guys are going to go, who own the mine.
Well, I
So
think
from
it
from
can
an
be.
ROI perspective, let's do this now. If you want to go electric, if that's really the best thing for us, fine. But don't sit on your hands now and do nothing.
You already have the vehicles. If you already have a vehicle and you can save money on it, it's a win-win both ways because you have less
Absolutely.
emissions. So yeah,
Yep.
that makes sense. I think it comes down to there's a lot of hype of what they call alternative energy was gonna be able to do and its actual
Mm,
capability at the moment. And then also if you're looking at from the environmental standpoint, lithium mines are horrible on the earth too. So it's kind of like trying to figure out what is the actual best case scenario. I know there's geopolitics and I know there's different points of view, but at the end of the day, if you can save your company money and then you can also get it set up to where you're helping the environment, getting more fuel efficient, having your vehicle run better, like I don't see why. I mean, it's a win-win on both sides. Because we were talking about that before too. Everyone gets to their extremes, like, oh, this is my team, and if you don't do what my team says, you're dumb. And in reality,
yeah.
people in the middle are the ones that normally get stuff done. Like, oh wait, this is practical. This makes sense. This does not. So no, I like that aspect of it. Um,
I've been
is
an
there
engineer
is
my
it
whole career. And so to me, a lot of it comes down to just numbers, facts, data, calculations, that kind of thing, and leave the political nonsense out of it. Let's just run the numbers and see what makes sense.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that's what most people try to do, and then they just virtual signal online, right and left. I'm just gonna say it that way because I see it on
Yeah.
both sides, and
Yeah.
it's annoying to me. Um, so have you always just been in engineering and that type of stuff? That's just always been your passion? Like, did you just like you didn't just automatically become an engineer? Like, there had to be like a flow. Whatever got you interested in
Oh man, yeah. Well, you could ask my mother. Um, when I was a kid, I was always taking things apart and making little gizmos. And my mother would walk into my room when I was a kid and go, "What in the world is all this?" Well, you just step on that over there, Mom, and it opens my closet door. So I was that kind of a kid for sure, and always taking things apart. Loved science, and uh, ran into a chemical engineer when I was in Boy Scouts, and kind of tell me what he does, and that sounds fun. I love that. So anyway, that simple decision was for me getting into chemical engineering. I mean, it was a natural fit though, just with the my love of science and my love of taking
that?
things apart and figuring things out, and working on all things mechanical and whatever. Uh, and so, I spent my whole career doing that, worked for several companies in my career. And then my last 20 years, though, was with Caterpillar in their diesel engine division. And if you look at my career, kind of getting into diesel, so another time we can talk and kind of get into that, but it's not a natural fit for what I was doing before with my engineering, but I fell right into it, and Cat was a good place to work. Was It kind of let me spread my wings and do a lot of things, and come up with a lot of unusual stuff, and they're pretty good about that. But anyway, learned a lot about diesel engines, which I hadn't known anything about, in my previous career, and it kind of
Mhm.
dovetailed in with my chemistry background and all. So anyway, when I left Caterpillar, then it just seemed kind of natural. I understood this chemistry stuff and I understood diesel engines when I ran across this technology. And by the way, I didn't invent it. But when I ran across it, my first reaction was, "Oh, I'm skeptical. Can this really be true?" I mean, I just worked for the largest heavy duty engine builder in the world for 20 years and didn't know anything about this. How can this be true? So anyway, I did my homework on it, and did a lot of homework on it actually coming in as a skeptic. It's like after I got done, it's like, man, this is real. I got to do something about this. I got to get this to my people, which is all my previous customers that are heavy diesel drinkers.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I love what you said because I look at all three of my kids. My oldest is a theater major. In fact, she's going to be doing Chicago in April, which is exciting. She
Cool.
got the lead role for that. My son is the opposite. He is a electrician now. He's 20, and like he's always been with his hands doing all the different stuff. And then my youngest is a space nerd. She loves it. Science and space. Like she gets these little crunch boxes from like there's a thing that kids can get that's like really can build it. She loves it. She's talked to, I had a friend on who was a moon geologist, and she's gotten to talk to her. And then she talked to the person on the, what is the one, the Artemis. So she talked to an engineer from that. Like, so she at first thought she wanted to
Wow,
be an
nice,
astronaut.
nice.
Yeah. She thought she wanted to be an astronaut, but now she wants to be an engineer and work for like science type of stuff. I'm like, cool.
Mm.
But it's always seen, I think this is what I always like to encourage is what you see in your kid, let them use their gifts because they work out. And all three came from same parents, same household, same raising. They just had different views, which I think that's good though. I do like that you've taken the knowledge that you've had with working with Caterpillar, with working with the diesel engines, and now doing something that at first you were skeptical. So what convinced you? What made you change? Or the people that are listening right now that might be skeptical, what questions did you have?
Probably most people are a little skeptical because you kind of look at it like, one of the questions I always get is, well, how come Caterpillar and Cummins aren't putting these right on the engines? And well, I do have an answer for that. Some of it's a little bit skeptical, perhaps, and we'll leave that for a separate phone call if somebody wants to call and get my answer to that
Yeah,
one. But
totally understand.
yeah, there's a little skepticism there towards the major engine builders because I've been there. But
Uh-huh.
when I first heard this, what I did this thing is made down in Florida, and I went down to Florida, flew down there, and kind of quizzed the company a bit, toured their factory, understood a little more about this thing. And then I went and I talked to some customers. I talked to some ex-employees even, to kind of get the real skinny on what's going on. And I went through just reams of test data that go back like 20 years of customer data, lab data. The company had spent millions of dollars on lab tests to prove this thing works. And so once I read all those things, and when I really understood the chemistry, and if you're with us now and you're kind of skeptical about that, I would get with me because I've got some cartoons I've drawn up on how this chemistry works and how it splits the thing and how a catalyst will break apart a molecule and stuff. And once I kind of understood all that, boy, it really made sense to me. I was like, well, no wonder this thing works. I get it.
Mhm.
And you take them long molecules and break up some of them into a shorter molecule. And of course, you're going to burn more efficiently, of course. And it just made so much sense to me.
That I think for like my mind who like I'm not, you're gonna laugh. So my son's very mechanical. My dad used to work on engines and cars. He's very mechanical. My wife's grandfather's very mechanical.
Hmm,
I'm not. It like
hmm.
you know how it will skip a generation? It skipped me. Like I can do things, but it takes me Google in 4 hours to do what they can do in like 20 minutes. It just is what it is. But
Yeah.
breaking
Yep.
that down with the longer and shorter molecules, I had forgot about that till you mentioned it. And I remember being in a chemistry class and now that is like coming back into my head. But
Hmm.
that just, I think it comes down to if you were going to give a 30-second pitch to a CEO of a company that had 100 trucks and you broke it down into layman's terms, I mean, I'm getting it, but just even break it down a little bit smaller. Why should they use this device?
Yeah, no, it's a great, it's the old elevator pitch thing. Um, what this product will do for any company that uses a lot of diesel, because it makes the combustion more efficient, it does two things for you. It reduces your fuel use and it reduces it by enough so that you're going to get like this 1 year payback if we're talking to a trucking company, over the road trucks, and you're going to produce lower emissions. So it's going to give you either bragging rights, or if you're in a country that does carbon swap, trading credits, carbon credits, that's actually going to make you a little money that way. Um, and if anybody has any question, like if the CEO in my elevator here was like, well, how does it work? I could certainly say those, do the longer chains to the shorter chains. You break them up with a chemical process that's actually done in oil refineries around the world every day. There's nothing new about this technology. There's nothing magic about it. But what it does is, breaks these things up. And the only thing interesting about this, you kind of take the chemistry of a refinery, and you put it under the hood of a truck. That's kind of new. That's kind of novel. But the chemistry involved, the physics, no, nothing new there.
It's just it shrunk the plant down because you said that there was a refinery that they used to do this all the time. Well, now you take the refinery and you just put the refinery in the truck instead of in the refinery.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And of
That's how
course,
I
you
would
don't
look at
break,
it.
you don't split up all the long molecules. You just a small percentage of them, just enough to make this difference.
Right, right. It still has to flow. It just still has to work. It just has it does enough to enhance what you're doing. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And I love taking people back. I'm really glad you mentioned, it's like, oh, okay, the cobwebs are clear, and I'm getting this from my high school chemistry. I'm starting to remember things now. I love taking people through that because other than that, it just becomes this black box magic thing. It's like, no, I mean, that's the last thing I want to portray is this thing is this magical thing that nobody can figure out. No, it's pretty simple physics. And once you understand it, you're going to go, okay, yeah, maybe we should try this.
Mhm. Well, I think that what happens is there's ideas that are made, and because people don't understand it, they say it's magic. But if you actually dig down into it, no, it's science. It's not
Oh,
magic.
yeah,
It's just this is
right.
what happens when you do this. Like if you strike flint, it's going to give you
Yep,
fire. It wasn't
yep.
magic, but at one point, people thought this guy can do magic. He can make fire. No, the guy
Yeah,
grabbed the right rock,
yeah.
strikes it on the right rock, and it made a spark. So, I mean, it's the same thing. It's just getting people to understand. Where can people find you at, Brian?
Well, what I mentioned earlier, the best way to really get a hold of me is just go to decarbonize5.com. And there's some calculators, in there that you can kind of plug in some things, figure out what 5 to 7%. I've got some sliders in there. You can set it to whatever you want to, even, and figure out what that would be for you. But those are kind of straightforward calculations. But a little trickier is how many tons of carbon dioxide are you going to save? And the calculators are also calculated for that. So you can kind of put in how much fuel you use, how many miles you drive, or whatever it is, and it'll tell you those things. And that's a good start. Then you can kind of say, is this worth it or not? You know,
Mhm.
and then you can decide to, go further from there and give me a call or what.
Well, my business mind goes here. Are there any states? I don't think the United States gives you carbon credit money wise, but are there any states that do? Like
Well,
California or Hawaii or something? I'm guessing.
Canada does, so,
Mhm.
all of our Canadian audience, they have a tax there that uh, basically it's a carbon tax. So if you're using less carbon, making less carbon dioxide, you're going to have less of a tax. So there's a direct payback for that, north of the border here. Um, the when you were talking about states, my mind also went to, is this approved? Like California. I think you mentioned California.
Mhm.
Um, is this approved in California? And yes, excuse me. Yes, it is. Yeah, it's been approved for use by California and the EPA. They don't endorse it, which of course they're not going to do for products, but
No, they never do.
they have they've looked it over. They understand the chemistry behind it, and they go, yeah, it's approved. You can use it. No harm, no foul. That's pretty much what they say.
Mhm. They don't endorse it because the government doesn't endorse. Well, rephrase that. The government doesn't endorse anything. If you are watching the video, you'll see I put air quotes up because sometimes they do. But I understand where you're coming with the
Yeah.
EPA and all. They're just going to say yes, you can use it. I got you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They're not going to endorse the claims, we make or anything, but they've seen it, in action, and they go, yeah, this is not going to hurt anything. We're approving it for use.
No, I mean it makes sense to me. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you
No,
save
they're
money.
not going to endorse, a particular
No,
product.
no, well, there's no, yeah, that would just backfire on them. I mean,
Yeah.
unless the senators like want to invest in it, then they'll pretend not to endorse it. But that's a different story for a
Hey,
different time
we're
here.
not going to go there. Yeah. That's for a different time.
So I know we talked a lot about, but was there anything in this process that we missed as we go to land the plane here? Anything with how it works, or anything maybe that you run into objections on that you want to overcome right here?
Oh, well, there's a lot of confusion with liquid additives. In fact, a lot of liquid additives call themselves catalysts. And I've even talked to people and showed them this thing, and they say, well, how much do you need to put in your tank? It's like, no, 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 no. You install this thing once and it will last, essentially it lasts forever, because if you look at there's a chunk of platinum, call it, and as the molecules get close, it takes some hydrogens. Again, I've got some cartoons. If you want some help, with this concept, just schedule a call with me. I'll be glad to go through this with you. For anybody in the audience. But it never wears out. It doesn't dissolve into the fuel, so it's not like it ever really wears out. The Yeah, so there's a lot of confusion, there. So when you install this thing once, and actually what I tell people is when you sell your truck, just take this thing off, put it on your new truck. Most people forget to do that, however, but because it never needs any maintenance. That's another, from a marketing standpoint, this thing's a disaster because it's just, you don't need to replace it. It doesn't need any maintenance. Once you buy this thing the first time, you never need to talk to me again. But so from a repeat sales and stuff, it's a challenge. But from a technology standpoint, this thing is great.
Mhm. Well, I think that happens a lot. Like I know there was and again, I'm a little bit of a science nerd sometimes, but like I know that there was like a hydrogen card that either Ford or Chrysler or one of the big ones bought out years ago and won't put out because it would have competed with their technology. There's other stuff out there all the time.
Yeah,
I had heard of the what was it, where they would put additives or stuff in. I'm thinking truckers are driving. They're not going to want to stop and remember to put an additive in, but with what you're doing, it's there. They don't have to think about it. If it's negative 30 degrees out, they're up north. They're not thinking, oh, I need to put my diesel additive to save 5%. They're thinking, I'm getting back in the truck so I don't freeze.
right. Yeah. And it's bad enough now truckers are forced to do the AdBlue, or I forget the name of the chemical that it is now, but anyway, the AdBlue, it's um, sorry, I'm blanking now on
Oh, no,
what it
I
is.
didn't even know they had to do that. I
Yeah, they
just,
do on
I've
all the
heard the
newer
additive
trucks.
one before.
Yeah, on the newer trucks. Well, there's a separate tank for the AdBlue, and it's you have to keep that filled. And unfortunately, if it senses that the tank is low, it'll actually put you on a limp home mode, so that you will not let that tank run empty. It's for the NOx reduction system on the after treatment. You
Oh, I
spray a
got
little
you.
bit of this on there as a as a catalyst, oddly, to help break up the NOx.
Wow, interesting. That is
Yes,
way
so
above what I understand.
well, yeah, I mean, just because of where I've been in my business, I get that.
Oh, no, no, totally get it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's people listening. They're like, oh, yeah, no, that makes sense. I totally get that.
Oh,
That's fine.
anybody that drives a truck knows what AdBlue is, and knows
Yep, yep.
the after treatment on the newer trucks, are they're sometimes not real user friendly. When you talk to a trucker, what's your biggest issue? And sometimes they say, you know, it's actually there's a soot removal in modern systems now where you got the ceramic filter. It's a DPF, or a diesel particulate filter, and then after that comes the NOx reduction. Well, this diesel particulate filter, you have to burn it out every once in a while because it's basically collecting soot. That's why you don't
Mhm.
see black smoke on trucks anymore, or at least
Ah, gotcha.
rarely, because it's all filtered out. But then when it gets plugged up enough, then you have to burn it out. And if you can imagine, you run your engine at real high temperature and basically you light off all that saved carbon in your DPF. And I hope I'm not getting too far into the weeds here, but
No,
that
it's good.
breaks it don. And every once then, when it is completely filled with ash, you have to take it out and either replace it or try to clean it out or whatever. So, the DPF, these diesel particulate filter, is not a favorite item
Mhm.
for anybody. And one thing with this technology, though, if you're burning more efficiently, you're producing less soot.
Mhm.
And so if you have less soot coming out of your exhaust, that means less soot going into your diesel particulate filter, which means longer time before you have to burn this out, or they call it regeneration. So you longer times between regens on your
Mhm.
DPF, which means it lasts longer. It's actually a tiny bit more fuel savings because you use fuel to do your clean out, your burnout, your regen. So there's another little benefit, but that would be really hard to measure.
Last question just about this. What about like diesel pickup truck? Can they do it for that too, or is this just for like semis and heavy equipment?
Well, I mean, no, you can use it. Where it becomes a bit of a problem there, though, is just from a return on investment perspective, because you don't burn enough diesel to get like a
For it to
1 year
make a
payback.
sense. Gotcha,
Now,
gotcha.
you know, most companies don't have very many 100% payback projects laying on their desk waiting to be signed. Um, if you've got like a 3 year payback, 4 year payback, that's probably more where most companies operate, where most of their capital
Hmm.
gets returned at. So, the 100, and of course, like I mentioned before, if you're in mining or railroads or any of those, bigger diesel drinkers, you're talking 300, 400%, or I've seen even more. Um, yeah, I mean, you should probably jump on that, at least investigate it on behalf of your shareholders.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It definitely does. And I'm always interested in new technologies or just different things, different ways to make stuff happen. Because I remember talking to a guy years ago and he was like, yeah, you just pour this in and it makes the diesel better. He did not do half the justice what you did. Like I was just talking to a guy while I was working and he was like trying to pitch this product. I'm like, bro, I sell used equipment. I don't put the diesel in it. I don't care. Like you're gonna have to go talk to them. But like he's like, you
Yeah,
just pour the diesel in it, and it would be. I'm like, okay, that's cool. But it's funny that, and that was actually probably 15 years ago, and now you actually
yeah,
have like the actual. I'm just gonna call it. You take your little mini refinery and put it in the truck,
right.
and
Just
you're
as,
good to go.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's kind of a wide, it's kind of an expensive wide spot filled with a lot of expensive, rare earth metals and such. And yeah, and it does the chemistry for you. Um, one thing though we didn't talk about, just as a side benefit thing, if you are producing less soot in your cylinders, that means that your engine life is going to be longer. Because if you think about soot as like tiny little charcoal briquettes, and you're wearing the cylinder liner, you're wearing the rings, you're wearing things on the valve train and all that. And if you have less soot, you're just going to wear out your engine slower. Um,
Mhm.
and also for those of you who are in this world, in this field, what degrades your oil? It's soot and then organics, right? Get fuel in your oil. And so if you're producing less soot and producing less volatile organics because you're burning more efficiently, your oil is going to last longer between oil changes as well. Um, when we're working with a customer on those, we generally say don't bother counting those; they're too hard to prove. But directionally,
Mhm.
that's correct. I mean, we've had some customers get 50% longer engine life, because of
Yeah.
this, and that's just anecdotal data.
Mhm.
I don't have lots of studies on that, but
It's
directionally, it's
logical
right.
though. Yeah, I mean it's logical. If you're not doing as much, so it's not going to screw your engine up, so it will live longer. And if you're
Yeah,
saving money and not producing as much carbon, you're not. Yeah, it's just cause and effect. That's
yep,
logical. I
exactly.
got you. Full disclosure, we're just giving you ideas. That way we cover ourselves on anyone that says Joe and Brian said no. Joe and Brian are just telling you this product works pretty well. These are some of the things that could happen for you. I only throw it out there because you never know. The wrong person listens to this and they trip out. And I just don't want that headache. So
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Now, if anybody
uh
wants more, go to that decarbonize5.com and let's book a call and let's talk about it. I'd love to help anybody either understand it more for their own curiosity, or if you do have a trucking company, or I like to joke, if your brother-in-law owns a trucking company, yeah, have him give me a call. Um,
definitely.
because this works. I've implemented it in a lot of applications around the world, and not just in the U.S. All over the world. So yeah, I'd be happy to talk to anybody about it. Love it.
No, that's perfect because we do have international listeners. So you might don't be surprised if you get reached out to by them. They actually
Oh,
are,
that's great.
some
No,
of them are a
I
lot more
talk to
active.
people all
Yeah,
over
yeah.
the world all the time. Yeah.
Yep, me too. Me too. I had a client in Germany once. I've had a client in Pakistan and some other places as well. So, yep,
Mhm.
totally cool. That's the one thing I love about the internet, which I'm a Gen Xer.
I
So
know. Yeah.
when I graduated, the internet was just starting to come out because I'm 48. Like, so it was really starting to come out in the mid 90s. I know the government had it before, but like commercial.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's just interesting to see how we can touch around the world where when I was a kid, there was no way. Like I remember going to Malaysia and having to use pay cards, call home because
Yeah.
that's all you could do. And now I can call home on my
Mhm.
cell phone if I'm traveling. So The world is definitely changing. Maybe 10 years from now, Brian, we'll be talking about a totally different thing because something new happened and there's a new thing. But I've
Yeah,
I've had fun with it. Yeah. Is there
maybe we'll be
anything else that,
holographic in each other's studios or
yeah,
something.
or if we could just do the little beep 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 like Star Trek? Like you do remember, this is the funny thing I think people don't realize. Phones, don't you remember like in the 50s when they were doing it, they had these little phones, this little thing and they would push it. Guess what? We have Star Trek phones already.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, though, the big thing was is impossible. It's like video calls, boy,
Mhm.
someday, boy, it's the science fiction thing, you'd see on cartoons like the Jetsons or whatever, it's
Yep,
like,
yep.
yeah, well, that's pretty commonplace these days, like you and I right now.
Mhm. Oh yeah, all the time. It's so crazy. Instead of
Yeah.
just meeting face to face or just calling someone and talking to them on the phone and never seeing their face. Yeah, yeah. The world is changing for the good. Is there anything we missed with this product or anything you wanted to leave our listeners with?
I sometimes I'll give an overview of what's going on in the whole decarbonization world. We talked about electric a little bit. We talked about hydrogen, but there's some other things that are even more immediate, like biodiesel, which is made from plants instead of from pulling up, dead dinosaurs. And that's a decent option. With biodiesel, though, there's oxygen in that molecule. And I don't want to get too lost in the weeds here, but that's one thing that kind of makes biodiesel biodiesel. There's an extra oxygen or two in those long chains. And because of that, it actually increases NOx when you burn it. Um, so, and NOx production is proportional to the temperature, and the biodiesel burns hotter. So, but on the other hand, if you use our device, it brings the temperature down because you're more efficient. And so you kind of negate that negative side of biodiesel. So you're going to
Is
burn less
that like the
biodiesel.
corn ethanol thing? Like for regular
Well,
gas? Was that similar biodiesel? That's just you said it burns hotter. My mind went to, and I don't even know if they do that anymore. But didn't they like have a corn ethanol thing for a while that
they
was
still
supposed to be
do.
better?
Yeah, most gasolines, not so much diesel, but gasolines that you and I put in our cars will have alcohol in it, and a lot of that's
Mhm.
from corn. What they call gasohol. Um, but that's not done so much in diesel. The biodiesel is made from, well, soybeans and things like that. And there's a whole nother category there called renewable diesel. And that is used from fats. And I mean, I'll be very general here. You go to McDonald's and you pick up their used French fry oil and you
Mhm.
reprocess it and you basically turn it into diesel molecules, and then you can burn it. And there's a pretty big industry happening for that. And the manufacturers of a claim that you get an exact duplicate molecule, but then they also say that it gives 5 to 7% less carbon. And I'm not exactly sure how that works. If you have the same molecule, you can have the same chemistry. But anyway,
Right.
that's their claim, and there's probably more to it that I don't get. But it is interesting that you can go through all that trouble reprocessing or whatever and get 5 to 7% lower CO2. Wonderful, you know, or you can just get this and skip all that, and get the same result,
And
from a
it probably
tailpipe
would cost a
standpoint.
little bit less.
Yeah,
That would be
yeah,
my thought. No,
yeah.
I love it, Brian. Thank you for being on the show. And for all you listening out there, if you know anyone that works in diesel or drives a truck or has heavy equipment or anything like that, that you can connect with Brian, please do and share this episode. And let me know more people that you want to have come on because this show's about waking up to a life you love living, learning new things, and exploring the world around you. Until next time, have a blessed day and go be amazing.